Greetings, testers, testees. Time for the test. This is our first test in science class. It's going to be Regent style. I'm going to read all the questions to you. We'll answer here using Edpuzzle. The nice part about that is you get immediate feedback. And also, like most Edpuzzles, I let you do it as many times as you want. So let's begin today's test. Number one. If scientists wanted to study the physical characteristics of an extinct animal who once lived in a specific area, the best source of information would be to investigate A, the animals that live in that area today, B, the fossil record of that area, C, the producer organisms living in that area at the current time, or D, plants living in habitats similar to those of long ago. Number two, white bark pines in Yellowstone Park. Scientists claim that the mountain pine beetles have been blamed for the death of mature whitebark pine trees in the greater Yellowstone forest ecosystem. The beetles burrow into the trees to lay their eggs. When the eggs hatch, the larvae feed on the tree, cutting off the flow of water. As a result, the trees become stressed and begin to die. An increase in temperature is contributing to the increase in beetles. Cooler temperatures tend to keep the beetle population controlled. Many organisms, including squirrels, birds, and even grizzly bears, have been impacted by the decrease in the numbers of trees. Many organisms use whitebark pine seeds for food. The data table below shows the proportion of live, mature whitebark pine trees compared with their population in 2000. That's this data table right here. The dependent variable in this study was A, the time the study was conducted, B, the proportion of live, mature whitebark pine trees, C, proportion of mountain pine beetles, or D, increasing temperature of the area. For years, number three, for years, scientists believed that flight evolved when ancestral birds climbed trees and then glided back to the ground. Recent fossil evidence suggests that flight may have evolved from the ground up, as early birds used to jump off the ground as a way to avoid predators. These discoveries suggest that A, scientific understandings can change as new information becomes available. B, scientists only use fossil evidence to study flight. C, ancestral birds always climb trees. D, most birds avoid predators by jumping off the ground into the air. Number four. The student read that liquid extracted from an aloe vera plant promotes the healing of burned tissue. She decided to investigate the effect of different concentrations of aloe vera on the extract on the regeneration, the regrowth of lost or damaged tissue rate in planaria. Planaria are small flatworms known for their ability to regenerate. The student used a sterile scalpel to cut each of 30 planaria in half. This gave her 10 heads and 10 tails for each of the three experimental groups. The planaria were kept in separate petri dishes in the same amount of water and at the same temperature. Group 1 received 0% aloe vera extract. Group 2 received 20% concentration of the extract. And Group 3 received a 40% concentration. On days 7, 10, and 14, she recorded the amount of tissue regeneration in all three groups. She observed that the group with the 20% aloe vera regenerated more slowly than the group with the 40% added. A reasonable inference based on these results would be that A, the application of aloe vera to earthworms would have no effect on tissue regeneration. B, if she applied 30% aloe vera to a group, it would regenerate tissue more rapidly than the 40% group. C, the control group, which received no aloe vera, did not regenerate. D, aloe vera affected the rate of cell division, resulting in an increased rate of regeneration. Number 5, fighting the flu. A new technique to attack flu virus antigens is being tested on mice. Normally, antibodies attack the head portion of antigens. Normally, antibodies attack the head portion of antigens on the surface of the flu virus. Since the head portions mutate frequently, antibodies do not provide protection for very long. The new technique is to develop antibodies that attack the stem portion of the antigen. Since the stem regions do not mutate very often, the effectiveness of the vaccine should last longer. The technique is represented below. See, you've got a diagram that shows how the traditional approach and this new headless approach. Which one of the following statements describes an observation that would best support the continued study of using antibodies produced by this new technique against the flu? A. Chemical tests showed that stem antibodies attached to the heads of some flu viruses and destroyed them. B. The use of these antibodies in mice stopped mutations that occur in flu viruses. C. Blood tests showed that only stem antibodies attacking the stem of flu antigens can cause flu in mice. Those attacking the head did not. Or D. A group of 50 mice with flu antibodies formed using the new technique were exposed to mutated forms of the flu. None of the mice became ill. Number 6. Researchers studied the relationship between lichen nitrogen content and the growth of lichens on trees. They recorded the amount of growth after determining the percentage of the tree that was covered in lichens. The data are shown below in the graph. Right? X-axis, tree covered by lichen. Nitrogen, y-axis, nitrogen content. Which one of the following statements best describes the relationship between the nitrogen content and the growth of the lichen? A, there is not a clear relationship between the amount of nitrogen in the lichen and growth. B, as nitrogen content of the lichen increases, the growth of lichen increases. C, as nitrogen content in the lichen decreases, the growth of lichen increases. Or D, as nitrogen content in the lichen decreases, the growth of lichen decreases. The graph below is number 7. The graph below shows carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere since the year 1000. What was the approximate change in carbon dioxide level from the year 1000 to the year 2000? Was it a decrease of 135 parts per million? An increase of 135 parts per million? An increase of 95 parts per million? Or a decrease of 95 parts per million? Number 8. A live plant was placed in a closed container in a lab. Sensors were set up to monitor the levels of oxygen in the container over several hours. The data were recorded in the graph below. According to the graph, at which hour were the lights turned on in the lab? Number 9, which two body systems provide humans with the raw materials necessary for their cells to release energy? Is it A, reproductive and circulatory, B, muscular and skeletal, C, digestive and respiratory, D, endocrine and nervous? Number 10, in order to prepare for a future outbreak of Ebola, a harmful virus, 2 vaccines were tested. In order for either of these vaccines to be effective, they must A, cause the immune system to produce special proteins that will recognize and destroy the virus. B, stimulate the human body to produce antigens that can attach to and destroy the Ebola virus. C, be able to destroy the DNA code that produces white blood cells that can carry the virus. Or D, produce bacterial cells that can attack the Ebola virus. Number 11, a biological process is represented below. Endocrine cells releasing hormones. Hormones travel through the blood cell. We've got target cell and non-target cell. The reason the hormones affect the target cell and not the other cells is that the A, target cell has specific receptors for the hormone. B, non-target cells produce antibodies that block the hormone. C, hormone provides energy only for the target cell. Or D, hormones can only leave the bloodstream near a target cell. Hey, a third of the way through the test. How you feeling so far? Doing pretty good. All right, let's continue with the test. When a person is threatened, the pituitary gland releases a hormone that stimulates the adrenal glands to release stress hormones. These stress hormones can cause a temporary increase in heart rate. This is an example of A, an immune system response, B, a feedback mechanism, C, an allergic reaction, D, an enzyme interaction. Number 13, an example of an activity that best contributes to maintaining homeostasis in an organism is A, A, response to a chickenpox vaccination. B, a bear eating fish from a polluted stream. C, person not sweating on a 100-degree Fahrenheit day. D, deer losing its fur at the start of winter. Number 14, changes in the external temperatures often result in a person either sweating or shivering, as represented in the diagram below. These responses are one way, one way to make the body release insulin to control blood circulation. B, to counteract feedback mechanisms that would otherwise be beneficial. C, the body is able to maintain dynamic equilibrium. D, skin and muscle cells are able to disrupt homeostasis. This question is called is constructed response. It's not a multiple choice, so you're going to write your answer, right? It's a written response. Okay, so here's the question. It starts with bumblebees. Bumblebees are extremely important in agriculture. They pollinate many flowering plants, including food crops such as tomatoes, pumpkins, and blueberries. The bees gather wet, sticky pollen from flowers and take it to their nests. Fungi present on the pollen keep it from spoiling. In the nest, bumblebee larvae feed on both the pollen and the fungi. Through his research, Dr. Sean Steffen discovered that the stored pollen and nectar that the bumblebee larvae feed on is rich in yeast, a type of fungus. Based on this observation, he proposed that the application of fungicides, chemicals that kill fungi, on agricultural crops could affect the quality of bumblebee food and ultimately the health of bumblebee colonies. He hypothesized that the fungi associated with the pollen suffer, that if the fungi associated with the pollen suffer, then the bumblebee larva will also suffer. Dr. Steffen designed an experiment in which 5 colonies of bumblebees only fed on flowers treated with fungicides. In the other 5 colonies, the bumblebees only fed on flowers that were free of fungicides. At the conclusion of the experiment, the control bee colonies averaged about 43 individuals. The colonies that fed on flowers with fungicides and no fungus only averaged about 12 individuals. Using information from the reading, explain how the results of the experiment support Dr. Steffen's hypothesis. Another constructed response. Your response is not a multiple choice. You write your answer. Number 16, scientists are interested in studying the effects of mother's alcohol consumption on the brain development of the fetus during pregnancy. In order to collect data, scientists typically use newborn rats because the rat's brain development after birth is roughly equivalent to that of a human fetus during the 3rd trimester, late in pregnancy. Scientists divided newborn rats into 4 groups and exposed them to alcohol using the following methods. Rat group 1 got no alcohol exposure. Rat group 2 got 4.5 kilograms a day over a 4-hour period. Group 3 got 4.5 grams per kilogram per day given over an 8-hour period. And group 4 got 6.6 grams per kilogram per day given to them over a 24-hour period. Here are their results. You need to tell me which group was the control group. We're back to some multiple choice questions. Number 17. To study how bacteria respond to antibiotics, 4 paper discs, 3 treated with different antibiotics and 1 treated with water, were placed in a nutrient source with bacteria and left for 24 hours. The water and antibiotics on the disc diffused into the nutrient source. If the antibiotics stopped the bacteria from growing, a circular area of no bacterial growth around the discs could be seen. Right? Here's the start of it. Here's 24 hours later. In this experiment, the purpose of using a disc treated with water is that A, it is needed as a standard safety procedure. B, it serves as a conclusion for the experiment. C, it can serve as a control for the experiment. Or D, it is needed to provide additional moisture. 18. An experiment is carried out to determine how different pH values of soil will affect the growth of tomato plants. In this experiment, the dependent variable could be A, the pH of soil, B, the height of tomato plants, C, the specific variety of tomato plants used, or D, the pH of enzymes in tomato leaf cells. Number 19, a student set up an experiment to test the effect of the number of seedlings planted in one pot on the rate of growth. All conditions in the experiment were the same except for the number of plants in each pot. The results are shown in the graph below. The dependent variable for this experiment was A, the number of plants per pot, B, average plant growth, C, time in days, D, the amount of water per pot. Number 20, the laboratory setup represented below was used to investigate the effect of light on aquatic plants. Equal amounts of green water plant were placed in beakers with glass collecting tubes. The beakers were placed in a temperature-controlled environment. The light source was placed at different distances from the beakers. After an hour, the amount of gas collected from the plants in each tube was measured and recorded in this data table. All right, which row in this chart here correctly identifies the variables in this experiment? Is it row 1, the independent variable is the amount of gas collected, and the dependent variable is the distance of beaker from light source? Or is it row 2, number of plants in the beaker, the dependent variable, temperature of the plant? Independent variable number 3, distance of beaker from light source, dependent variable, amount of gas collected? Or is it number 4, the independent variable is minutes of exposure to the light source, dependent variable is rate of gas collection? Is it A, row 1, B, row 2, C, row 3, or D, row 4? Oops. There we go. 21. The student designed an experiment to determine if air temperature had an effect on the rate of photosynthesis in corn plants. The independent variable in this experiment is A, the air temperature at which the corn plants are grown. B, the volume of oxygen produced by the corn plants. C, the amount of carbon dioxide used up by the corn plants. Or D, the number of corn plants used. "22. A student wanted to investigate the effect of light on the rate of ripening tomatoes. She set up 4 pots of the same size with identical amounts of soil, water, and type of tomato plant. Each plant was exposed to a different light intensity as shown in the table below. The independent variable in this experiment is A, the type of tomato plant, B, the color of tomatoes, C, the amount of soil provided, or D, light intensity." Holy cow, we are 2/3, 66% of the way through the test. Let's keep her rolling. Let's do this. All right, number 23. Scientists who study rock formations in caves describe some of the formations as, quote, living rock, because under certain conditions they increase in size. Which one of the following statements would best dispute the claim that these rock formations are living? A, rocks remain stable in a wide range of physical conditions. B, rocks are not composed of cells, while living organisms are. C, rocks cannot produce sexually. D, rocks perform complex metabolic processes but cannot grow. "24. Which life function is not necessary for an individual organism to stay alive? A, reproduction, B, nutrition, C, regulation, D, excretion." Number 25. A small lizard spends the morning hours lying in the sunlight until his body temperature rises. Later on in the day, the lizard rests in a shady area until his body temperature cools. This type of behavior is important to A, attract mates, B, detect variations, C, maintain homeostasis, D, obtain nutrients. Number 26, which one of the following changes is an example of a response to a stimulus? Is it A, the water level of a pond rises on a rainy day? B, a dead tree decays after many years? C, a leaf absorbs sunlight in the morning? Or D, the pupil of an eye decreases in size in the bright light? "27. The diagram below represents the organization of structures within an organism. We have cells in the middle, and X, then organs. Which term best indicates the structures represented by the circle labeled X? Is it organelles, B, tissues, C, chromosomes, D, organ systems?" Okay, this is, again, not a multiple choice. You got to write your answer. Number 28, the sequence below represents different organizational levels within the human body, from the simplest to the more complex. Complete the sentence by correctly filling in the missing levels. You've got organelles are the simplest, right? More complex are blank, and then more complex are tissues, and then more complex are blank, and then more complex is organ systems, and then the most complex is organism. Fill in the two blanks. Number 29, these diagrams represent some of the systems that make up the human body, system A, B, C, and D. A similarity between the systems shown is that they all, A, are separate and do not interact with other body systems. B, they all work together to maintain a stable internal environment. C, they contain organs that work independently from other organs in that system. D, they are made of cells that are identical in structure and function. Number 30, same diagrams. Which row in the chart correctly identifies the main function of the system shown in the diagram? All right, so is it A, row 1, where system A is response, system B is excretion, system C is circulation, system D is digestion? Or is it B, row 2, system A is for movement, system B is for response, system C is for circulation, system D is for digestion? Or is it C, row 3, system A is for response, system B is for circulation, system C is for excretion, system D is for digestion? Or finally, is it D, row 4, system A is for movement, system B is for circulation, system C is for digestion, system D is for reproduction? '31, increased concern over the number of heat-related illnesses among football players has led to a possible change in uniform design. Shoulder pads were designed to constantly blow cool, dry air underneath the shoulder pads. Test shows that the use of this device during rest and recovery periods resulted in a reduction of body temperature and heart rate. This new device would help the athlete to A, eliminate the release of heat from the body, B, maintain homeostasis, C, increase muscle strength, D, control the rate of muscle activity. Question 32. As blood glucose levels increase, hormones are released to return glucose levels back to normal. This is an example of A, the synthesis of antibodies, B, a nervous system disorder, C, a stimulus and a response, or D, an antigen and an antibody reaction. And number 33. Which graph best illustrates the body temperature in an individual maintaining dynamic equilibrium? Is it A, B, C, or D? And that's it. You did it. That's the last question on the first test of the year. Hope you got a feel for some of the Regents questions. Remember, I've set the Ed Puzzle up that you can go back and redo as many times as you want. So really, there's no excuse to not do really well on this test, right? So go back and fix some of the questions if you need to. Think about them again. Heck, why not? What's the worst thing that happen is you get them all right. All right, thanks for taking your first test. Over and out.